Born in Durango, Mexico, and raised in East Los Angeles, Eduardo Escondido became the main cannabis distributor in California for Ivan Guzman Salazar, the oldest son of Joaquin Guzman, also known as El Chapo. Through his years of service to the cartel, he earned the nickname El Mago for his ability to move large quantities of marijuana undetected. But in 2014, Escondido was indicted for conspiring to distribute over 10,000 kilograms of marijuana and laundering the drug proceeds. He served nearly 5 years in federal prison and was released in 2018. After his release, Escondido sought to leave his criminal past behind. He launched a successful chain of hibachi restaurants and food trucks under the name Benny Bachi, later rebranded as Best Hibachi, and by 2022, the business reported $12 million in income. Everything on the surface is seen to be transitioning well, but despite his efforts to change his life, Escondido's lavish lifestyle, featuring luxury cars and high-profile social connections, led to ongoing speculation about his involvement in illegal activities. But that speculation really came into play on the night of November 22nd of 2023. That day, Escondido attended a concert by Ramon Ayala at the Pico Rivera Sports Arena. Afterward, he visited a friend in Linwood and later attended an after-hours party in a warehouse in Willowbrook. And at around 8:20 a.m. on November 23rd, an altercation occurred at the party. And after a quick exchange, Escondido was shot 10 times by Guillermo D., also known as Sad Boy, a gang member from 18th Street.
Eyewitness News has learned that a man with ties to El Chapo's Sinaloa drug cartel was found gunned down Thanksgiving morning. 39-year-old Eduardo Escobedo was one of 2 men found dead in an industrial stretch of Willowbrook. Escobedo, nicknamed El Mago, which translates to the magician, was the primary local marijuana distributor to El Chapo's eldest son. He was released from prison in 2018 after serving nearly 5 years for drug distribution and money laundering.
Sad Boy, who was intoxicated and under the influence of meth, was also shot and killed at the scene, and a third individual was also shot. LAPD, they didn't disclose the motive for the shooting, but some reports suggest that the killing may have been ordered by Nestor Perez-Salas, also known as El Nini, a security chief for the Los Chipitos faction of the Sinaloa cartel, as part of internal conflict with the organization. Rest in peace to Escondido. While it's still alleged, he had close ties to the deadly Sinaloa cartel, one of the most deadly organizations in the world. They've crossed more than borders, they've infiltrated cities, corrupted institutions, and reshaped America's criminal underworld, from dusty trails in Sinaloa to suburban stash houses in Georgia, Arizona, and California. The Mexican cartels are here. Today, we're addressing some of the most deadliest gangs in the world, the cartels. This is a story of their rise, their spread, and their empire. Let's get into it.
Hocicón, se te mocha la lengua. Si andas de dedo, se te mochan los dedos. Si metes la cabeza donde no te llaman, se te mocha la cabeza.
Y nos movimos con todo lo que teníamos.
These are sicarios, elite hitmen who carry out the cartel's murders. They battle the military to hold on to their leader.
This is the deadly and chaotic gun battle erupting in the Mexican city of Culiacan after the Mexican government says the National Guard and Army attempted to arrest El Chapo's son. Authorities say a heavily armed drug cartel ambushed the military and police, spraying them with bullets.
400 shoes. All that's left of the many people disposed of here. There's no way of knowing how they died, but the volunteers found ovens hidden under the earth, presumably where they were burnt.
Most of those killed are believed to have been members of Jalisco New Generation, one of the area's most powerful drug cartels, responsible for the deaths of more than 24 police officers since March.
This is the secret door and stairs hidden behind a mirror, down which Guzman fled before the soldiers eventually located and arrested him.
Mexican authorities have just released his closed-circuit video from inside the prison, showing Joaquin El Chapo Guzman in the final moments before he broke out.
In the video released by the Defense Ministry, today you see here a hail of bullets by Mexican soldiers. We're told they're shooting at members of the Gulf Cartel.
Someone called 911 to report a vehicle that erupted in flames. You can see residents scrambling to put the fire out with garden hoses.
Agents seized $33 million worth of drugs from a Norco home. Officers recovering 3,500 pounds of methamphetamine and 66 kilos of cocaine. They believe a cartel was trafficking the drugs.
Nothing about this house shouts it's part of America's greatest organized crime threat.
Search warrant! Search warrant!
Except these guys.
Police department!
Throughout metro Atlanta, DEA agents say Mexican drug cartels are hiding in plain sight.
Engaged in the trafficking of, in this case, drugs, but often also guns and human beings.
4 rival Mexican drug cartels have dug in along Atlanta's interlocking highways, a shipping link to the rest of America.
The origins of the cartels. Few criminal empires in modern history have cast a long and terrifying shadow as the Mexican drug cartels. Their history is not just one of violence and corruption. It's a story of power, poverty, opportunity, and ruthless ambition. To understand how these criminal syndicates rose from the shadows to dominate the global drug trade, we gotta go back. Back to a time to where the seeds of the empire were first planted in the soil of chaos. In the 1970s, Mexico was under the grip of a powerful ruling power called the Institutional Revolutionary Party, in Spanish known as Partido Revolucionario Institucional, also known as PRI. During its reign, PRI oversaw both economic growth and severe repression. While it helped modernize Mexico's economy, it also engaged in widespread corruption, election rigging, and political violence, including events like the Tlatelolco Massacre, which occurred on October 2nd of 1968 in Mexico City. Just days before the country hosted the Summer Olympics, thousands of students and civilians gathered at the Plaza de la Tres in the Tlatelolco neighborhood to protest government repression and demand democratic reforms. And as the protests unfolded, Mexican military and the police forces opened fire on the crowd, killing hundreds, with estimates widely disputed to this day ranging from dozens to several hundred. The government immediately blamed the violence on the protesters and suppressed the media coverage. But over time, evidence revealed that this was a deliberate, coordinated attack by the state to silence dissent. So this political party was widely known for its corruption pretty much the whole time it was in office. And it controlled the country with near absolute authority. And that's in every regard too. They ran the politics of the country, controlled its funds and the media. And that's surface level. They also ran the underbelly of Mexico. It got to a point where in the underworld, a quiet pack existed. Drug traffickers could operate as long as they kept the peace. And that's exactly what they did. Early smugglers, they started small with marijuana and opium, moving it across the U.S. border. But behind closed doors, a criminal infrastructure was taking shape. This is when infamous figures like Miguel Alex Felix Gallardo, also known as El Padrino, or the Godfather, started his rise. A former cop turned drug lord, he spent most of the 70s trafficking drugs, and by the 1980s, he founded the Guadalajara cartel. All this, it was new for traffickers of that era, because Gallardo did what no one else had done before. He united rival traffickers into a single powerful syndicate. It was a cartel, ran like a Fortune 500 company. And with the help from corrupt government officials, this cartel operated and seen a lot of steady growth in the 1980s. Bribes flowed, borders opened, and billions of dollars were made. With that empire, it would soon face a reckoning, with them attracting the attention of American government officials due to the heavy flow of drugs coming into the country, which ultimately started the war on drug campaigns, which sought to take out organizations just like the cartel.
This is crack cocaine, seized a few days ago by drug enforcement agents in a park just across the street from the White House. It could easily have been heroin or PCP. It's as innocent looking as candy, but it's turning our cities into battle zones.
This led to several attempted takedowns led by the DEA. But these failed attempts are when the cartel started to be known for their brutality, having several shootouts with the DEA, and they even assassinated a DEA agent. Enrique Camarena, also known as Kiki, was a US DEA agent stationed in Mexico during the 1980s. He was investigating the cartels, particularly the Guadalajara cartel, which at the time was one of the most powerful trafficking organizations in the country, led by Miguel Felix Gallardo, Rafael Quintero, and Ernesto Carrillo. On February 7th of 1985, while doing surveillance on cartel members, Kiki was abducted in broad daylight in Guadalajara by cartel hitmen, allegedly with the help or complicity of corrupt government officials. He was then taken to a house where he was tortured for 30 hours before being killed. His body, along with that of his pilot, was found weeks later, brutally beaten and buried outside the city.
Last Tuesday in a Los Angeles court, Dr. Alvarez Machain was charged with the murder and kidnapping of DEA Special Agent Kiki Camarena. Camareno's body was found on a Mexican farm in 1985. He had been brutally tortured by drug barons trying to learn what American officials knew about Mexican corruption. former senior DEA official today says Dr. Alvarez was present during the beatings and administered the drug lidocaine to keep Camarino alive during the brutal interrogation.
Kiki's murder was the first death of an American Asian outside the USA. And at that time, Mexico wasn't known for its violence, at least publicly. So it shocked Americans and the US government. The nation, it was used to agents and government officials being untouchable. The world now knew this wasn't the case. Kiki's death, combined with the daily war in Mexico and the overflow of drugs into the country, led to Operation Leyenda, the largest DEA homicide investigation ever established. Kiki's death and the ongoing violence in Mexico severely damaged U.S.-Mexico relations and exposed the deep corruption within Mexico law enforcement and political circles.
The people that should be brought to justice in Mexico are those who paid for this kidnapping.
If the crime was committed in Mexico, it must be trial in Mexico.
This operation also marked a turning point in the drug war, setting off years of retaliation and reshaping the cartel dynamics in Mexico. Eventually, under intense pressure from the U.S., the Mexican government arrested the Godfather in 1989, and with the cartel's central figure gone, the Guadalajara cartel splintered, leading to the rise of new regional cartels. These included the Tijuana cartel, the Juarez cartel, the Gulf cartel, Los Zetas, the Sinaloa cartel, which would later become the most powerful of them all, and also the Jalisco New Generation cartel, also known as CJ&J. Gallardo's downfall essentially decentralized Mexico's drug trade, replacing one united cartel with a violent patchwork of rival organizations, each one hungrier, bloodier, and more ruthless than the last. Here's the thing, the takedown of Gallardo's cartel didn't stop the demand for drugs in the US either. In fact, that demand only skyrocketed, due to the crack era being in its peak by the mid-1980s. So the potential profits were too high for these organizations to pass up. At this point, each cartel was fighting for power within the country, which set the stage for decades of cartel wars that still continue to this day. And these wars are by far some of the most deadly in Mexico. That's because the cartels, they evolved from smugglers to soldiers, even building private armies. Los Zetas, for example, were once elite military commandos. Now, they become executioners for hire.
You do what you have to do, whether you have to kill them all or only one person. If you have to kill the entire family will die.
Corpses left hanging as warnings, entire cities held hostage by fear, and still they grow. The modern cartel isn't just a drug gang. It's a multinational criminal enterprise. They traffic people, steal oil, hack digital systems, and influence elections. Their reach, from the jungles of Mexico to the suburbs of Middle America. The origins of the cartel isn't just a Mexican story. It's a global warning, born from poverty, fed by corruption, and protected by silence. The cartels rose in the shadows, but their legacy echoes in the daylight.
They've been trained in military tactics to the standard that we would train our military forces that are deployed in Iraq.
The cartel next door. How Mexican drug empires quietly conquered the U.S. The influence of Mexican drug cartels in the United States runs far deeper than any realize. While popular media often portrays cartel violence as a foreign issue confined to the Mexican border, the reality is far more alarming. Cartels have built vast networks that stretch across America's cities, suburbs, and highways, using local gangs, traffickers, and even unwitting citizens as pawns in a billion-dollar game. From Los Angeles to Atlanta, their grip is firm, strategic, and often invisible to the public eye. In Los Angeles, the cartels have forged daily alliances with some of the city's most notorious street gangs. Gangs like MS-13 and 18th Street, both rooted in Central American and Latino communities, act as key distributors for the cartel's most profitable commodities, meth and fentanyl.
What was once produced in the back of camper vans is now produced in huge quantities and makes huge profits for the cartels. They were so convinced that the quality of their product would be good that they gave it away to America for free.
These gangs receive product in bulk directly from cartel connections and handle the dangerous task of breaking it down, selling it on the streets, and protecting turf. This relationship benefits both sides. The cartels, they avoid direct exposure, and the gangs, they receive a steady stream of high-purity drugs and protection from rival dealers. While the operations in America are a lot more low-key compared to Mexico, a lot of their violent traits and ways are still known to spill on American soil.
A car on fire and smoking in the middle of an unsuspecting Southern California neighborhood with 3 bodies inside. One tied up, another stabbed, all found shot.
In November of 2015, Raul Flores was recruited by Rosario Ramon Lopez, a former associate of the Berliza brothers, for a hit against the men. Edgar and Jewel had close ties to the Sinaloa cartel, had allegedly cut Ramon Lopez out of their drug enterprise. In seeking revenge and control over the operation, Ramon Lopez orchestrated a plan to eliminate the brothers and reclaim the business. So on November 9th of 2015, Flores and his accomplices confronted Antonio Medina, Fernando Meza, and Edgar Berleza in Orange, California. During the confrontation, the three men were forced into a GMC Yukon and driven to a secluded location, where they were shot multiple times before the SUV was set on fire. Meza was also stabbed and found with his hands bound. Soot in his lungs indicated that he was still alive when the SUV was set ablaze. Surveillance footage captured Flores jumping from the burning vehicle as it rolled through a residential neighborhood. But Flores and his crew, they weren't done yet.
He then went to another apartment and stole safes, money, and more than $60,000 worth of heroin before forcing another victim into a car and killing him too.
Later that day, Flores and the others kidnapped Joe's brother, Joe Berliza. They broke into his apartment, stole safes, cash, and over $60,000 worth of heroin before forcing Joe into his own car, driving him to an off-road in Fontana, shooting him multiple times, and recording his dying moments on the cell phone.
Eggleston says it's surprising the cartel would use a hitman from the U.S.
So that's what may have led to his conviction.
In this case, there were so many people involved, which could provide more witnesses to police, but that is a catch-22.
The intimidation factor, people don't want to come forward.
In April of 2024, Flores was convicted of 4 counts of first-degree murder with special circumstances for multiple murders, and he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. And Rosario Ramon Lopez remained at large, but was killed in Mexico in retaliation for the murders. This was just one case in California. As we'll discuss later, the cartel's roots run through the whole state of California. But that's just the surface of how far the cartel's activities have spread. They have multiple major operations throughout the nation. Houston, for example, has become one of the most important cartel hubs in the United States. Its proximity to the southern border, sprawling road network, and massive shipping infrastructure make it the perfect launch point for multi-state drug operations. Cartel operatives, some US-based, others sent directly from Mexico, manage safe houses, stash spots, and truckloads of drugs moving north. From Houston, cocaine, heroin, meth, and fentanyl fan out to cities across the Midwest to the East Coast. At times, federal authorities discovered entire logistic networks, complete with counterfeit documents, sophisticated surveillance systems, and even tunnel access routes.
Out of the 180-some tunnels found so far along the U.S.-Mexico border, 107 were discovered right here in the city of Nogales. Dozens of them within a football field of where we're standing.
Their concealing methods are just creative. It's creativity. It's that simple.
For years at this point, Mexican drug cartels, they've been constructing smuggling tunnels beneath the Texas-Mexico border, particularly in areas like El Paso. These tunnels, they're engineered to facilitate the movement of narcotics and people into the United States. Authorities have also said finding these tunnels are damn near a common occurrence.
Crab walking our way down a giant former drug smuggling tunnel between the U.S. and Mexico. One of the ways that tens of billions of dollars of drugs are trafficked into the U.S. every year. Over the years, U.S. and Mexican authorities have found and destroyed over 180 tunnels along this border. The question, they say, isn't whether there are more tunnels, but how many and where.
In January of this year, U.S. Border Patrol agents in El Paso discovered a man-made tunnel originated from Mexico. This tunnel, concealed beneath a metal plate and a storm drain, measured 6 feet in height and 4 feet in width. It was equipped with lighting, a ventilation system, and wooden reinforcements. Authorities believe it was used by the Sinaloa cartel for smuggling activities. Also, further investigation revealed the cartels often disguise tunnel exits in the U.S. side using fake storefronts, such as pizzerias or mechanic shops to avoid detection.
In a retirement community carved neatly into the floor of a garage along this quiet street. Looking at this house, would you ever think that there's a highly sophisticated tunnel right through there?
You could drive by it a million times and not have any clue.
Topping off this ruse is this engineering gem, a trap door operated hydraulically from 1,000 feet away in Mexico.
The tunnels are sometimes outfitted with rail systems and air ducts, resembling underground cities. Yeah, these tunnels are crazy. They come equipped with different rooms you can hide in, and even traps just in case you're being followed. And they're built so quickly that it's hard for authorities to keep up with the locations of them. Now, in response to these threats, U.S. and Mexican authorities have intensified collaborative efforts to locate and seal each tunnel. For instance, a joint operation led to the discovery of a 1,000-foot-long tunnel connecting a small city in Mexico and El Paso. The tunnel featured lighting, ventilation, and wooden supports. These developments, they're not new, but they did highlight the ongoing challenges in securing the U.S.-Mexico border against smuggling operations orchestrated by drug cartels. But the cartel's influence is far from this tunnel. They have a deadly reputation in the state as well, and they've been in numerous headlines. For example, in 2013, the assassination of Juan Guerrero Chopper stands as one of the most audacious cartel-related murders on U.S. soil, highlighting the extensive reach of the cartel into American communities.
This is the man the FBI says ordered a hit on 43-year-old Juan Guerrero Chapa. The husband and father was fatally shot in his SUV in the parking lot of South Lake Town Square in May 2013.
Guerrero, an attorney, was a former legal advisor to Osil Gillian, the imprisoned leader of the Gulf Cartel. After cooperating with U.S. authorities and named the forfeiture of approximately $50 million in cartel assets, Guerrero, we relocated him and his family to South Lake, Texas under a new identity. Despite his efforts to maintain a low profile though, he remained involved in criminal enterprises, including investments in casinos and other businesses across Texas and Florida, which definitely came back to haunt him. On the evening of May 22nd of 2013, Guerrero and his wife were at South Lake Town Square. As his wife loaded shopping bags into the Range Rover, a white Toyota Sequoia pulled up right behind him. After that, a masked man exits the car and fires multiple shots to the passenger window, killing Guerrero instantly before they set and split the scene. Due to Guerrero's past and the nature of how everything played out, it was immediately known that this wasn't just a random shooting. And after an investigation, U.S. authorities identified Jose Hernandez, known as El Gato, a high-ranking member of the Beltran Oliva cartel, as the orchestrator of the assassination. Motivated by a personal vendetta, believing Guerrero was involved in his father's murder, Hernandez initiated a complex surveillance operation in 2011 to locate and track Guerrero down. Hernandez enlisted a team, including Jose Cortez and Jesus Capano, to conduct surveillance on Guerrero. And the team, they definitely did their job, employing methods like installing GPS trackers on Guerrero's cars, setting up hidden cameras around his residence, and using various rental vehicles to avoid detection. And all these efforts unfortunately led to Guerrero's death.
This is the latest development for a case that has seen the arrest of 5 individuals, convictions of 3 individuals who tracked and stalked the victim, and 1 individual who was extradited and is awaiting trial.
This case, it underscores the pervasive influence of Mexican drug cartels beyond their borders and the challenges faced by law enforcement in combating transnational organized crime. And what makes these organizations even harder to stop is how far they spread the nation. It's not just California and Texas. Like mentioned, these guys are in every state. That's why further east in the seemingly quiet suburbs of Atlanta, cartel presence takes on a stealthier form. Instead of shootouts or street-level cells, the suburbs, they conceal stash houses, ordinary-looking homes in middle-class neighborhoods, where millions of dollars in drugs and cash are stored.
Nothing about this house shouts it's part of America's greatest organized crime threat.
Search warrant! Search warrant!
Except these guys. Throughout Metro Atlanta, DEA agents say Mexican drug cartels are hiding in plain sight. Inside this closet, a shopping bag holds $250,000 in cash. Also seized, 6 pounds of methamphetamine with a street value of another $250,000. 4 rival Mexican drug cartels have dug in along Atlanta's interlocking highways, a shipping link to the rest of America.
These houses, they're chosen for their anonymity and the low police scrutiny. For the cartels, Atlanta is a crucial distribution point for the southeastern U.S., allowing product to flow discreetly to cities like Charlotte, Nashville, and Miami. And the cartel's operation in this region, it makes sense for them, simply because it makes it easier for them to move large quantities of narcotics across the region. Through these activities, there have been several raids and takedowns in the Atlanta area over the years. In 2013, a stash house on Pittman Road in College Park was identified as a distribution point for cocaine supplied by a cartel network. Cartel members, they made numerous trips to this location to receive cocaine for distribution throughout Georgia, illustrating the organized nature of cartel operations in this area. Also in April of 2024, federal agents uncovered a mesh stash house worth approximately $1.6 million in a Stone Mountain home linked to a Mexican cartel. The bust also resulted in a seizure of over $100,000 in cash. Federal agents arrested 14 people, it seized over 200 firearms along with fentanyl, meth, and cash. This operation highlighted the cartel's involvement in both drugs and weapons trafficking within the region. But despite the common takedowns, the cartels remain an active issue for the locals. That's because cartels, they mastered the art of blending in.
Alcaraz is an opportunist, Whipple says, doing business with all the cartels. For Alcaraz, it's a family business. As we watch, his son, all of 13, contacts this blonde woman.
All right, the little kid walked up and...
Inside this car, DEA agents say she settles a drug debt. This is Alcaraz's house, a low-key lifestyle for a guy Whipple says earns $50,000 a week.
They're gonna drive the beat-up pickup with a push mower in the back, and they're gonna try to look like a guy who's running a landscaping business.
The goal is always the same. Move the product efficiently, avoid law enforcement, and maximize profit. Technology has made this easier too. Cartel networks now use encrypted apps, drones for surveillance, and GPS-tracked vehicles to manage thousands of miles of supply chains without ever setting foot on U.S. soil. The cost of this invisible empire is staggering. Over 100,000 Americans now die each year from drug overdoses. Most from synthetic opioids like fentanyl, which cartels mass produce. And cities across the nation are overwhelmed with the social consequences. Addiction, violence, being homeless, and broken families. Law enforcement, they struggle to keep up too. Often seizing one shipment, only to see 2 more slip through. And because the cartels are decentralized and adaptable, dismantling one network rarely slows down the other. Here's the truth. The cartels, they're not just invading America. They've already embedded themselves in it, not with guns or tanks, but with quiet precision. Through partnerships with gangs, infiltration in cities, and a strategic exploitation of weak points in America's infrastructure, they've created a criminal economy that thrives in the dark. California, the Golden State's underbelly.
Federal agents have been after El Mencho here in Los Angeles and in Chicago for years as his new generation cartel, known as CJNG, has been making violent inroads to the illicit drug trafficking markets in both cities.
California is more than beaches and movie star. It's also the most vital stronghold on the West Coast. From the farmlands of the Central Valley to the barrios of Los Angeles, the Sinaloa cartel runs the drug game here. The city of Los Angeles is a city known for dreams, lights, and endless opportunity. But beneath the surface, Los Angeles is also one of the most critical drug trafficking hubs in North America. A silent engine powering a deadly pipeline, from the mountains of Mexico to the streets of America. For decades, Mexican cartels have used the city as a key staging ground in their billion-dollar drug operations, turning highways, neighborhoods, and street gangs into vital components of their criminal enterprise. Its size, diversity, and location make it the perfect distribution point for cartel-supplied meth, heroin, cocaine, and the deadliest drug in recent years, fentanyl.
We immediately came across a street with so many people doing fentanyl, it was hard to get by.
Could I ask what you're smoking, sir? Fentanyl.
There you go.
Seeing this firsthand is pretty shocking.
He trying to make it up. There you go. Got it, bro?
Fentanyl was developed as a pain medication. Its use as a recreational drug, though, has exploded due to its low cost. It's 100 times stronger than morphine, and even a tiny quantity can kill.
The pipeline, it begins just south of the U.S.-Mexico border. Powerful criminal organizations like the Sinaloa Cartel and the Jalisco New Generation Cartel control smuggling routes from Tijuana into San Diego, where drugs are often hidden in vehicle compartments, disguised in commercial shipments, or carried by human mules. From there, the product flows north into Los Angeles, a city where illicit drugs can disappear in a crowd and reemerge on street corners from Long Beach to East LA. Once inside Los Angeles, the cartel rely on deeply entrenched gang alliances to handle local distribution. Gangs like Serenios are tasked with moving their cartel-supplied meth, black tar heroin, and increasingly, fentanyl-laced pills. And the influence of the Serenios are Leme, in particular, stretched far beyond Los Angeles. As a loose affiliation in Southern California Latino gangs, the Serenios act as kind of a distribution network, helping the cartels push drugs more up north. And in Central California and across the western United States, MS 13 and 18th Street, known for their transnational connection and extreme violence, are also deeply embedded in this ecosystem, often using their brutal tactics to control local markets and silence competition. From San Diego to Los Angeles, the cartel supply chain continued its journey. Interstate highways like the I-5 and Highway 99 become big corridors leading north to cities like Bakersfield and Fresno, both of which have become hotspots for fentanyl overdoses and cartel-linked activity. These smaller cities, they're actually ideal for the distribution, allowing drugs to flow deeper into Northern California, Nevada, and beyond. And at every stage, cartel-linked traffickers use stash houses, fake businesses, and encrypted communications to avoid detection. Far from the chaotic border towns and urban drug markets, Mexican cartels have quietly transformed California's rural Central Valley into a key zone of operation. Known for its endless farmland and quiet working-class towns, the Central Valley may seem like an unlikely place for cartel activity, but it's exactly why it's so effective.
New details surrounding possible Mexican cartel murders that happened on American soil. A family ranging in age from 10 months to 72 years old were killed in Goshen, California earlier this month. Officials say a crime this heinous goes beyond gang relations and points to the cartel.
Under the cover of agriculture and isolation, cartel members, they turn barns, trailers, and abandoned buildings into meth super labs, producing massive quantities of drugs destined for streets across America. These makeshift labs, they're often hidden in plain sight, behind orchards, inside machine sheds, or buried under layers of hay or old equipment. And the chemicals used, they're hazardous and toxic. But the cartels, they don't care. They choose locations miles away from law enforcement centers, where neighbors might be too scared or too far away to notice strange activity. And where labs are raided, authorities frequently uncover not just meth, but weapons, encrypted phones, and tens of thousands of fentanyl pills. That's why small towns throughout the Central Valley, places like Tulare, Madera, and Merced, they become unlikely battlegrounds in a drug war most Americans never see. Local gangs often work as the cartel's enforcers or middlemen, guarding stash houses, and settle in debt through intimidation or bloodshed. Drive-by shootings, mysterious disappearances, and overdoses are rising, while police departments, often understaffed and underfunded, struggle to keep pace with the scale and complexity of the threat. The cartel's presence in the Central Valley is more than a crime story. It's a reflection of how deeply embedded their operations have become in American life.
Now, they displayed in the conference room these boards that show the state routes that these cartels and gangs are known to take that stretch from Jalisco, Mexico, all the way up to the state of Washington.
By moving into rural areas, they avoid scrutiny of big city task force by exploiting regions already stressed thin by economic hardship. And have had more than a few intense people residing there who reinforced a lot of the politics in the area when it came to the distribution of drugs in the Central Valley. Jose Martinez, also known as Hermano Negre, the Black Hand, is from Fresno. He's a Mexican-American hitman who confessed to killing 36 people across 12 states between 1978 and 2013. But many of his crimes occurred in California's Central Valley.
Could you tell us how many people you killed?
About 36 people. You can't imagine what people have told me when they hired me to go and kill a person for them. After I get paid, they told me, you know what, Martinez? I feel a weight have lifted from my heart.
Where he operated as a contract killer and debt enforcer for the Mexican cartels. Born in 1962 in Fresno, California, Martinez spent part of his childhood in Mexico before returning to the U.S. as a preteen. He was exposed to organized crime early on. His stepfather was a heroin trafficker convicted in 1977. A pivotal moment for him came in 1978 when Martinez's sister was raped and murdered. And at 16, he tracked down and killed the 3 men he believed responsible, burying each of them in a shallow grave. This act, it marked the beginning of his life as a killer. Martinez, he described himself as a freelance Sicaro or hitman who carried out contract killings and reinforced debt for the Mexican drug cartels. He often conducted surveillance on his targets, used firearms provided by clients, and never used the same weapon twice. His nickname, Hermano Negre, originated from the gunpowder stains on his shooting hand. And like mentioned, he was active in the 1970s, all the way up to 2013. But in that year, Martinez was arrested in Arizona on a warrant for the murder of Jose Ruiz in Alabama. During the interrogation, he confessed to killing Ruiz over personal reasons and admitted to over 30 murders in the U.S., many related to cartel activities. He provided detailed accounts, including victim descriptions and crime diagrams, which helped solve several cold cases. And because of his confessions, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. This is how essential California is to the Mexican cartels. LA acting as a distribution point Central Valley acting as production, and San Diego acting as the entry point. The result? California has become one of the most critical staging areas for the Mexican cartel's U.S. drug empire. And for the Sinaloa cartel and cartels alike, it's really only the beginning. The cartel, they have a heavy hand in pretty much every state in America, with states like Georgia and Texas being huge for them. The cartel triangle, how Houston, Dallas, and San Antonio became key nodes in Mexico's drug empire.
A child in fear after alleged undocumented individuals attempted to break into the home that sits on the hunting ranch where Debbie spends half of her time. What was once her safe, happy place.
This whole area is their playground. They basically own it. It's sad.
Has now become a fortress of sorts.
In the shadows of Texas' biggest cities, Mexican drug cartels, they built an invisible empire. Houston, Dallas, and San Antonio, they aren't just your average American cities. They're criminal outposts in a criminal supply chain that moves billions of dollars in narcotics from Mexico to every city in the United States. These cities with their sprawling highways, diverse populations, and strategic locations have become operational hubs for some of the world's most powerful and violent criminal organizations. Houston in particular functions as a major cartel logistics center. Its vast interstate system connects its border directly to markets across the USA, and its massive warehouse and shipping infrastructure provides cover for illicit activity. Cartel members, they use front companies, rental properties, and stash houses to store and repackage drugs, often moving meth, cocaine, and fentanyl by the ton. Quiet neighborhoods, they mass high-level meetings and multi-million-dollar transactions, all orchestrated by cartel lieutenants embedded into the community. These men don't flaunt wealth. They manage operations with corporate-level precision and street-level ruthlessness. Dallas, further north, acts as a secondary distribution point. From here, cartel-controlled drug routes extend into the Midwest and the eastern United States. The city's location, which sits along major trucking routes, make it ideal for long-haul transportation of narcotics hidden inside commercial shipments. Cartel members often pose as business owners, truckers, or logistics managers, allowing them to operate under the radar. Local gangs in Dallas, many affiliated with national networks, assist in guarding shipments, collecting payments, and handling street-level enforcement when disputes arise. San Antonio, meanwhile, serves as a key staging ground due to its proximity to the border and Central Texas location. Cartels use it both as a transit city, storing narcotics in rural ranches and suburban homes before they move further inland. Law enforcement in the region, they regularly uncover stash houses and operations complete with security systems, armored vehicles, and weapons arsenals, all hidden and unassuming properties. In many cases though, cartel operators, they live low-profile lives, blended into the working-class communities that surround them. Cartels like the Sinaloa and the Zetas have become masters of gaining power through multiple businesses and political bribes, but double-cross them and they're known to retaliate, often in the most brutal manner. Antonio Pina found out the hard way. Pina, a Mexican-born rancher and businessman, became a central figure in a complex web of drug trafficking, political corruption, and violence that spanned both sides of the U.S. and Mexico border. Pina operated as a liaison between the Zetas cartel and high-ranking Mexican politicians. In addition, he facilitated the laundering of drug proceeds through U.S. and Mexican banks, amassing a fortune that included millions in Swiss bank accounts and extensive real estate holdings in Mexico. In 2010, the Zetas entrusted Pina and his brother Alfonso with $5 million intended as a bribe for notorious candidate Rodolfo Torre Cantu of Tamaulipas, Mexico. However, the funds never reached Cantu. The Zetas soon discovered the misappropriation, leading to Alfonso's torture and murder in 2011. His body was then displayed publicly with a banner accusing the brothers of theft and implicating them in Cantu's assassination. Fearing for his life, Pina fled to San Antonio, Texas, where he was arrested in February 2012 at his residence in the Champions of the Ridge subdivision. He was then charged with conspiracy to commit money laundering. And in 2014, Pina pled guilty to the charges and was sentenced to 30 months in a federal prison. And he agreed to forfeit approximately $5.5 million in assets, including properties and bank accounts. Pina's brother's death and the money involved brings up the looming point that these networks are not just organized street crews. They're highly structured organizations with clear roles, command chains, contingency plans, and consequences. Cartel lieutenants in Texas are tasked with overseeing massive shipments, coordinating with local enforcers, laundering money through businesses, and ensuring silence through bribery or intimidation. Their operations resemble a shadow corporation, and their goal is not chaos, but control. They avoided tension by spreading risk across multiple people and properties, making it extremely difficult for law enforcement to dismantle their entire system at once. The result is a cartel presence in Texas that's deeply entrenched and increasingly difficult to detect. A trucking company might also move fentanyl. A quiet cul-de-sac could be a staging area for millions in drug revenue. In Houston, Dallas, and San Antonio, the cartels don't just visit. They live, operate, and expand. The cartel leaders, power, blood, and billion-dollar empires.
¿Ocupación de usted? Agricultor. ¿Su lugar de nacimiento? Sí. Municipio de Guanajuato. Fecha de nacimiento? 4 de abril del 57.
In a dark world of narco-trafficking, few names are feared, respected, or notorious as those who led Mexico's most powerful cartels. Joaquin Guzman, also known as El Chapo, Ismael Zambada, also known as El Mayo, Nemesio, also known as El Mencho, and Osil, they're not just drug lords. They're criminal architects who have transformed Mexico's cartels into billion-dollar empires that stretch deep into the heart of the United States. Through cunning leadership, violent enforcement, and vast distribution networks, these men, they left a permanent mark on not only Mexico's, but America's streets as well. Joaquin Guzman, or El Chapo, became the most infamous cartel leader in modern history as the face of the Sinaloa cartel. Known for his daring prison escapes, one through a laundry cart, and the other through a mile-long tunnel.
And the cockroaches are pretty funky.
Well, the cockroaches too.
But it only has to be comfortable enough to do one thing: smuggle drugs fast.
And those sacks, I mean, that's got to weigh up 50 to 100 pounds, each one of those things. They have to haul them all the way back through this.
Correct. They drag them all the way back.
Dirt goes out and drugs go in.
If you do a 4,000-pound load of marijuana and you sell it, does that pay for the tunnel?
I'm sure that pays for the tunnel easily.
El Chapo, it was definitely more than a headline grabber. He was a logistics mastermind. Under his command, the Sinaloa cartel, they perfected the art of drug smuggling, moving cocaine, heroin, meth, and fentanyl into the United States through elaborate tunnels, corrupt officials, and hidden compartments in commercial trucks.
It appears to be marijuana, smells and looks like marijuana.
The potential profits are high, so the cartels pack every spare space in the trucks.
On top of that, El Chapo built direct pipelines into major American cities and partnered with local gangs to ensure smooth and violent enforcement. At its height, the Sinaloa cartel was responsible for up to 80% of all illegal drugs entering the United States, generating billions in profits. But after years on the run and multiple captures, El Chapo now serves life in 88 Florence, the most secure prison in the United States. But his legacy and his networks, they live on. That's because behind the scenes, Ismael Zambada, also known as El Mel, was always seen as the real brain behind the Sinaloa cartel. A former marijuana and poppy farmer turned kingpin, El Mel, he understood the long game. He kept a low profile, avoided the limelight, and focused on strategy. While El Chapo drew global attention, El Mel quietly managed cartel finances, international shipments, and high-level negotiations. His ability to forge alliances, ride political figures, and maintain discipline within the ranks helped solidify the Sinaloa cartel's dominance even after El Chapo's arrest. Many believe that El Mel was a stabilizing force that allowed the cartel to survive leadership shakeup. Then came the rise of El Mencho, leader of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, also known as CJNG, the Sinaloa cartel's deadliest rival.
One of the biggest threats we face right now with respect to drug trafficking is the Cartel de Jalisco Nueva Generación, CJNG. They're the ones responsible for pushing powerful synthetic drugs into the United States like methamphetamine and fentanyl, and they're also at the same time responsible for a large portion of the violence that we see in Mexico. They run those distribution cells. They're the ones responsible for getting the drugs when the drugs come in the United States, parceling the drugs up, making shipments to the East Coast, selling some of the drugs locally, and also for procuring firearms to take back to Mexico and commit the violent acts down there.
A former police officer turned fugitive, El Mencho built his cartel into a hyper-violent, highly militant organization that specializes in intimidation and shock tactics. His cartel is infamous for ambushes against police convoys, public executions, and use of social media to spread terror.
4 police officers and a doctor are dead in apparently coordinated attacks in and around the northern Mexican city of Monterrey. Police believe that the killings are linked to the ongoing drug violence in the country. In one of the attacks, gunmen opened fire on a Monterrey police station, killing a medical doctor and wounding 3 officers. In 2 other attacks carried out within minutes of each other, 2 police officers were killed. The spokesman for the Security Council in that area of Mexico says the attacks were aimed at intimidating and reversing recent efforts to clamp down on violence in Monterrey. Mexico's 3rd largest city has been rocked by drug cartel turf battles.
But behind the violence lies a ruthless business model. CJNG pushes meth and fentanyl across the border in record quantities. also controlling production from Mexico to street-level sale in the U.S. Through networks in California, Texas, and in the Midwest, El Mencho's cartel has become one of the fastest-growing cartels in the world. And El Mencho himself is now America's most wanted drug trafficker, with a $10 million bounty on his head. Osil Gulian, once the feared boss of the Gulf Cartel, represents an earlier era of cartel dominance, but his influence still echoes today.
In Tijuana alone, there are 3 cartels fighting for power: the Sinaloa Cartel, Jalisco New Generation, and the Tijuana Cartel. Although there are many other cartels in Mexico, these 3, plus another known as the Gulf Cartel, are the most powerful.
A former Mexican federal police officer, Gulian rose through the ranks with a mix of charisma and sheer brutality. He was the man who militarized the drug war, founding the infamous Zetas by recruiting elite Mexican special forces as his personal enforcers. Under his leadership, the Gulf Cartel expanded deep into the U.S., particularly in Houston, Atlanta, and the Southeast. And Gulian was definitely a bold leader, bold enough to confront U.S. governments directly, threatening to kill one of them at gunpoint. Though captured in 2003 and later expedited into the U.S., his strategies, especially the militarization of the cartel enforcement, set a precedent that modern groups like the Jalisco New Generation cartel still follow today. Together, these 4 men redefined the scale and sophistication of drug trafficking into the United States. They didn't just smuggle narcotics, they built systems, distribution networks, financial laundering routes, intelligence gathering units, and enforcement wings, from rural meth labs in California to stash houses in Atlanta. Their fingerprints were everywhere. It's safe to say they turned American soil into cartel territory. And even from prison, or while still at large, they remain architects of a daily empire that continues to operate, evolve, and expand. Cut off the head, and another one rises. The endless evolution of the cartel beast.
Sources tell ABC 3340 officers found 5 Hispanics dead inside one apartment, all of them with slit throats.
In a sprawling suburban complex, police made a gruesome find. Inside this apartment, 5 men tortured, then brutally murdered.
Despite the high-profile arrests, dramatic takedowns, and extradition of cartel leaders, the drug war hasn't slowed. It's escalated. Because in a world of Mexican cartels, power doesn't just die with the boss. It mutates. For every El Chapo thrown into a supermax cell, there's a younger, hungrier successor waiting in the shadows. More violent, more tech-savvy, and more willing to wage war than the last. The cartels aren't collapsing under pressure. They're evolving under it. And the result, it's a more deadlier and a more unpredictable criminal underworld that stretches deep into the United States. Nowhere is this transformation more visible than the ongoing war between the Sinaloa cartel and the Jalisco New Generation cartel. A brutal struggle reshaping the future of organized crime in the Americas. After El Chapo's fall, the Sinaloa, they splintered into different factions known as the La Chapitos and the Omega Zapata. The old school strategists still lurking in the shadows. But while Sinaloa battles itself, CJNG, led by Lemesio Cervantes, also known as El Mencho, have been on a warpath, seizing territory, attacking rivals, and declaring open war on the Mexican state itself. The clash between Mexico's 2 most powerful cartels has exploded in some of the bloodiest, most brazen violence seen in years. With front lines stretching from Aguila, Michoacan, El Mencho's cartel unleashed a full-scale offensive against Sinaloa allied gangs, using armored pickup trucks, roadblocks, and heavy caliber rifles. CJNG gunmen have relentlessly attacked local police and rival plazas, turning this avocado-growing region into a fortified war zone. In one ambush late last year, at least 13 officials were murdered in a single attack on a convoy. An operation emblematic of this cartel's paramilitary tactics and its unrelenting push to take control from the Sinaloa cartels. Further south, in Chicomucillo, Chiapas, a mass shooting occurred on May 14th of 2024, which left 11 civilians dead. Some of them been caught in the crossfire of a turf battle along a trafficking corridor. Witnesses, they described gunmen storming houses at dawn and executing residents on the spot, with authorities confirming that the area it had become a front line to the Sinaloa and the CJNG struggle for control. An escalation so alarming that it's driven entire communities to flee, contributing to the region's record migration flows. And as the battle rages above ground, CJNG also perfected secret extermination camp.
400 shoes. All that's left of the many people disposed of here. There's no way of knowing how they died, but the volunteers found ovens hidden under the earth, presumably where they were burnt. This group of volunteers, called the Warrior Searchers, found this: a massive crematorium hidden in a ranch in the community of La Estanzuela. The strange thing, local authorities seized the ranch 5 months ago, but reported none of the infrastructure.
On May 5th of this year, Mexican Marines uncovered a gruesome site in Jalisco, an underground bunker where victims' bodies were burned in ovens with bone fragments across the floor, branded by murals celebrating the Mencho. This camp is a chilling symbol of the CJNG's efforts to intimidate rivals into total submission, a brutality matched only by the Sinaloa's own history of mass graves. And the battles are occurring everywhere too. Even the airspace has become a battlefield. In recent days, a drone-borne bomb attack was filmed targeting a CJNG fuel convoy near Guadalajara. The footage, which went viral online, shows a quadcopter loaded with C4 dropping its lethal cargo onto a moving truck and exploding in a fireball. Proof that both cartels are now waging high-tech warfare normally reserved for the military. In these episodes, they're only some of the more shocking highlights of an ever-deepening conflict. And as Eastside innovates from trenches to tunnels to drones to death camps, their war for territory and profits only grow deadly, and the human toll continues to mount on both sides of the border. CJNG isn't just a local cartel. El Mencho runs it like a military force, complete with armored convoys, battlefield tactics, and drone warfare. Videos circulated CJNG soldiers in tactical gear, waving rocket launchers and pledging loyalty like an army. They've attacked police stations, assassinated officials, and left severed heads on highways as calling cards. Their message is clear. Intimidation is strategy. In their war against the Sinaloa cartel, entire towns in Mexico have become frontline. Villages wiped clean, civilians caught in the crossfire, and bodies left on display as warning. And this war, it spills over to the US, where both groups battle for control of key cities like Los Angeles, Phoenix, and Chicago. Meanwhile, Sinaloa isn't going quietly. They've doubled down on synthetic drugs, flooding the US with fentanyl. Cheap to make, easy to hide, and devastatingly lethal.
San Francisco is one of the richest cities in the world. But below its gleaming buildings lies a humanitarian disaster.
We have had, more overdose deaths in 1 year than we did of COVID deaths in our city.
Every day, on average, 2 people die from a drugs overdose here.
They've also invested in technology, using encrypted apps, GPS-controlled trafficking routes, and even cryptocurrency to move product and money across borders. Cartel lieutenants now act more like CEOs than gangsters, managing multi-million-dollar supply chains with ruthless efficiency. The next generation of traffickers isn't just more violent, they're more tech-fluent and globally connected. So the circle is self-sustaining. Kill one leader, and 10 more step up. Each generation harder, faster, and more committed to dominance. Arrests, while they are symbolic, they rarely weaken infrastructure. Instead, they provoke internal power struggle, new alliances, and even more bloodshed as rising stars claw their way up to the top. Government officials may claim victories, but the cartels only grow more adaptive, embedding themselves deeper into the systems they exploit. This is the drug war's harsh reality. We're not fighting a monster with one head, but a hydra that feeds on chaos, corruption, and profit. And as long as demand exists, so will supply, carried not just by mules, but by men who build empires from blood, data, and war. The fentanyl crisis. How the cartels engineer America's most deadliest drug epidemic.
Somewhere around 70,000 or so people die each and every year from an opioid-related overdose. Back in the early 2000s, the culprit was oxycodone, an opioid that most would probably recognize under the name of OxyContin. But in 2013 or so, it was fentanyl that overtook both OxyContin and heroin on the center stage in the opioid epidemic. As for who's to blame, well, it's a combination of things. You have pharmaceutical greed and malpractice, you have healthcare providers that are over and misprescribing their patients, and then you have a flood of illicitly produced fentanyl coming from China, Mexico, and India. All of those factors were working together to create the current fentanyl crisis.
America is in the grip of a silent massacre. Every day, over 150 people die from synthetic opioid overdoses. Most of them linked to a single deadly drug, fentanyl. It's cheap, it's potent, and it's everywhere, from suburban schools to city streets, from rural towns to elite college campuses. But this epidemic, it isn't accidental. It didn't emerge from a lab in isolation. It was built, brick by brick, by the Mexican cartels. Specifically, the Sinaloa cartel and the Jalisco New Generation cartel, who turned fentanyl into their most profitable and devastating weapon. Fentanyl is up to 50 times more stronger than heroin and 100 times more powerful than morphine. Just 2 milligrams, the equivalent of 2 grains of salt, can kill a human being. And unlike cocaine and heroin, fentanyl isn't harvested, it's manufactured. Cartels no longer need vast fields or large smuggling convoys. All they need are precursor chemicals, mainly shipped from China in small labs hidden in Mexico's remote regions. There, under the protection of armed guards and corrupt officials, cartel chemists cook up massive batches of fentanyl powder and press it into pills that mimic legit medications like oxycodone and Xanax. Once produced, the drugs flow quickly into the United States. The cartels, they build industrial-scale distribution networks that push fentanyl through every available route. The numbers are staggering too. In 2023 alone, U.S. law enforcement seized enough fentanyl to kill every American twice. And that's just what they caught. More than 50 millions of pills and kilograms go undetected, spreading death in every direction. The cartels, they're not just profiting from this crisis, they're fueling it. Fentanyl is easy to mass produce, harder to trace, and generates huge profit margins. A kilogram of raw fentanyl that costs less than $5,000 to make can be turned into $1 million in profit and street value. It's a high-risk, high-reward operation that cartels are exploiting with ruthless efficiency. What's more chilling is that this isn't just about drugs. It's a form of chemical warfare.
So that's pretty extreme. I know people that have been having, seizures, and I know a lot of people that have died.
Families across the United States are losing loved ones who never intended to take fentanyl. Teenagers experimenting with what they think is a painkiller, veterans self-medicating with street opiate, partygoers taking what they believe is MDMA. All of them fall victim to a synthetic poison designed for profit, not survival. And the cartels, they know it's happening. They know it's people who are dying by the thousands. But death to them is just another cost of business. That's why this isn't a drug crisis. It's a national security emergency. The cartels, they've evolved into multinational corporations of death, producing and trafficking a substance that's now the leading cause of death for Americans aged 18 to 45. Cartels in the Midwest, the South, and the digital age. There was a time when America's Midwest and Southern states felt insulated from the chaos of the drug war, far removed from the brutal headlines coming out of Los Angeles, Tijuana, and the Texas-Mexico border.
Smuggled in this delicious fruit was cocaine.
Today, the Sinaloa cartel and the Jalisco New Generation cartel are embedding themselves in the unlikeliest places and along the backbone of America's economy, the trucking routes. The cartels, they brought their war to America's heartland, but not with soldiers and shootouts, but with synthetic poison, cash, and stealth. And the damage has already been done. In states like Ohio, Indiana, and Kentucky, fentanyl busts have become a regular occurrence. In 2022, a DEA raid in Columbus, Ohio, uncovered a stash house holding 40 pounds of fentanyl, enough to kill every resident in the city multiple times. In Louisville, Kentucky, Cartel Inc operatives were caught moving drugs through commercial vehicles disguised as farm shipments. These aren't isolated incidents either. They're part of a nationwide shift. Cartel officials have realized that the Midwest and South offer perfect cover. Smaller law enforcement budget, less scrutiny, and thousands of miles of roadways that are ideal for distribution.
Mexico's drug cartels are now the main suppliers in at least 230 U.S. cities and dominate 70% of America's illegal drug market. Just outside Atlanta, Gwinnett County is their new drug hub.
We're finding that they're transshipping cocaine through Atlanta to Miami. So the days of the cigarette boats and the pastel suits, those are gone. And I guess we're the new Miami Vice.
College campuses also became unexpected battleground. Cartel affiliates, they're exploiting student demand for party drugs, pressing fentanyl pills that look like Adderall, Xanax, and oxycodone. In 2023, the University of Georgia reported multiple overdoses tied to counterfeit pills traced back to cartel-ran supply chain. Students, often aware of taking fentanyl, become collateral damage in a war that they never saw coming. The cartels, they don't care if the victims are young, educated, or first-time users. Every pill sold is money earned, regardless of the body count. Meanwhile, the trucking routes are being transformed into arteries to death. Major interstates like the I-40, the I-7 are used to move drugs from border states into the interior, with key distribution hubs in places like Tulsa, Memphis, Nashville, and Kansas City. These cities, which were once logistical hubs for goods, now serve as cartel relay points. In Missouri, a 2023 raid uncovered a Cartel Inc distribution network, moving meth and fentanyl from a remote warehouse outside of Springfield. The drugs, they were destined for several southern and Midwest states, proving that the cartel's infrastructure has become just as efficient and organized as Amazon or FedEx. The Sinaloa cartel, with its deep roots and global reach, use these areas to move high values of product while keeping a low profile. CJNG, more militarized and aggressive, stakes its claim through intimidation, flash violent, and increasingly bold operations. In Atlanta, for example, a CJNG connected bust in 2023 resulted in the seizure of $6 million in drugs and cash from a quiet suburban home, along with over 30 weapons and ammunition. These incidents, they're not random, they're strategic. The cartels have adapted and now view the South and the Midwest as fertile ground for expansion. The myth that rural America and small-town life are immune from cartel influence has been shattered. The drug war is no longer a border issue or a big city crisis. It's a nationwide infiltration. Cartels have embedded themselves like parasites in the infrastructure of everyday life. This war isn't coming, it's already here, and it's spreading silently to the soil of American heartland, which is done through several means of operations and schemes. Some include exploiting isolation and underfunded law enforcement, using legitimate businesses as fronts, exploiting transportation networks, and even buying silence and corruption. Cartels are not just invading rural America, they're adapting to it. They use the same tactics once reserved for border towns or urban hubs, but customize it for the geography, culture, and the vulnerabilities of U.S. small communities. With fentanyl flowing like never before and meth labs quietly cooking behind barns, the front lines of the drug war now run through America's back roads. At this point, it's known that the cartels are everywhere when it comes to how they move their drugs, and they will get it moved by any means necessary. Roads, highways, tunnels, the sea, sky. The cartels, they've tried all these methods when it comes to getting their product off. But a recent development, which has been very lucrative for the gang, is the digital self-drugs. Arcos 2.0, how cartels leverage gangs and tech to rule the U.S. drug market. The modern Mexican drug cartel is no longer just a band of drug smugglers crossing the border under the cover of night. Today's cartels are multi-billion-dollar, tech-savvy empires that operate like corporations and wage war like insurgents. The most lethal advantage? A hybrid model that combines street-level American gangs with cutting-edge technology, turning cities into distribution zones and smartphones into drug delivery pipelines. The result is a criminalized network that's fast, decentralized, and almost impossible to trace. In cities like Atlanta, the Jalisco New Generation Cartel doesn't need to put its own soldiers on the street. Instead, it funds local crews, small, often overlooked gangs that serve as the cartel's American foot soldiers. These crews move meth, heroin, and fentanyl through the city. In the arrangement, it works beautifully. The CJNG stays out of the spotlight while the street affiliates takes the risk. From suburban stash houses to inner-city trap spots, CJNG's influence in Atlanta is growing rapidly, all while keeping a low profile that confuses even federal investigators. In the Midwest, cities like Chicago have long been hotspots for cartel activity. But what's changed is who's running the streets for them. Gangs like the Vice Lords and the Gangster Disciples once focused on turf wars and petty crime. Now, they act as local distributors for cartel-supplied fentanyl and cocaine. The Sinaloa Cartel and the CJNG flood the city with product via interstate corridors and these historic gangs moving on ground, using their deep roots in the neighborhood to manage retail operations. It's a dark alliance built on profit, where decades of street credibility are now leveraged for multinational drug distribution. But perhaps the most disturbing development is how technology has made drug trafficking as easy as ordering food. Cartel-supplied dealers now take orders via Snapchat, Telegram, WhatsApp, and even Instagram. Buyers send a message, drop a pin, and get delivery sent to their door in minutes. And many transactions are handled through gig apps like Uber, DoorDash, or even Lyft. When unsuspecting droppers drop off packages without knowing they're delivering death. Teens and young adults, they become both buyers and sellers, often unaware that they're trafficking lethal doses of fentanyl disguised as pills or powder. The use of encrypted apps and gig platforms make law enforcement jobs nearly impossible. Investigations that once took months can now be undone in seconds. Just a white phone, a new username, and the trail goes cold. And because these tools are global and anonymous, cartel bosses in Mexico can direct operations in real time, managing U.S. street-level cells from luxury hideouts thousands of miles away. The fusion of organized street gangs and high-tech tools has created a drug empire that's faster, smarter, and deadlier than anything law enforcement has ever faced before. It's no longer a question of how the drugs get in. It's how quickly they reach a buyer. And as long as the cartels can hide behind gang members, burner phones, and encrypted chats, they'll continue to poison American communities with their near-total impunity. The government responds, cracking down or falling behind.
The Department of Justice says 29 suspected members of a violent drug cartel are now in U.S. custody after being handed over by authorities in Mexico. That includes a drug lord linked to the torture and murder of a DEA agent back in the 1980s.
That's exactly right. Caro Quintero's transfer is notable. We're talking about the co-founder and leader of the Guadalajara cartel, a man that has been on the DEA and FBI's most wanted list for over 4 decades for the suspected kidnapping and murder of a DEA agent. Back in 1985, his name was Enrique or Kiki Camarena.
The Mexican cartels have gone from border threats to nationwide infiltrators, establishing trafficking and distribution routes in every state in the U.S. From rural Ohio to suburban Georgia, from New York City to the heart of Texas, the cartels, especially the Sinaloa cartel and the Jalisco New Generation cartel, now operate coast to coast. The question Americans are now asking is simple but chilling. Is the government winning the war on drugs, or are we already too late? Federal agencies like the DEA, FBI, and Homeland Security investigations have ramped up efforts. There have been major fentanyl seizures, high-level arrests, and international indictments targeting cartel leaders.
The Trump administration has been launching a pressure campaign on Mexico, threatening a 25% tariff on Mexican goods starting Tuesday. That move, President Trump says, is to hold Mexico accountable for its role in failing to stem the flow of drugs and migrants over the border. So, call it a peace offering of...
New programs like Operation Last Mile have tracked cartel-connected drug deals in all 50 states. On top of that, the Department of Justice has designated the CJNG as one of the most dangerous criminal organizations in the world, offering multi-million-dollar rewards for information leading to the arrest of leaders like El Mencho. But while these responses make headlines, they often feel like playing whack-a-mole. For every dealer or trafficker taken off the street, another one quickly takes their place. The heart of the issue lies in the scale and sophistication of the cartel operations. These aren't just gangs smuggling drugs. They're multinational criminal enterprises with their own supply chains, security forces, and digital infrastructure. And they adapt faster than the bureaucratic systems trying to stop them. While U.S. authorities spend months building cases, the cartels switch apps, change routes, and replace operatives in days. They use encrypted messages, drones, cryptocurrency, and even exploit gig economy platforms to move product, all coordinating logistics from thousands of miles away in Mexico. And then there's the demand side. As long as Americans continue to consume narcotics, especially fentanyl, there will always be a market cartels can exploit. The government, they've invested in public awareness campaigns, addiction treatment programs, and harm reduction strategies, but the supply of drugs continue to outpace the solution. The economic model favors the cartels. Fentanyl is cheap to produce, easy to transport, and increasingly addictive. All this has caused critics to argue that the war on drugs launched decades ago has become a war on symptoms, not the source. While that's led to arrests and seizures, it hasn't slowed cartel expansion or reduced overdose death. In fact, 2023 saw record levels of fentanyl-related deaths in the U.S., despite the government's most aggressive countermeasures yet. The system is stretched thin. Small-town sheriffs, they lack the tools to track international syndicates, and even federal agencies admit they're often 2 steps beyond. The reality is sobering. While the U.S. government is fighting hard, it's not winning. The cartels have adapted faster, spread wider, and embedded deeper than ever before. Without a major shift, one that targets both the supply chain and in demand at home, while also investing in new technology, international cooperation, and local enforcement, the war on drugs may continue to look more like a long, slow retreat. The government, though, they claim they're doing a lot, saying they launched a full-scale offensive against the Mexican drug cartels, claiming billions of dollars have been funneled into dozens of federal agencies, each tasked with taking down a piece of the puzzle: the traffickers, the drugs, the guns, and the money. Raids hit stash houses in Chicago, border agencies fentanyl pills in Arizona, and DEA operatives dismantle entire networks operating inside U.S. cities. And yet, despite the firepower, the headlines remain unchanged. The drugs keep coming, the overdoses keep rising, and the cartels, they just keep growing. At the heart of the paradox is one undeniable truth. The federal response is massive but fragmented. Agencies like the DEA, FBI, DHS, CBP, ICE, and local law enforcement operate within their own lanes, with their own intelligence, objectives, and jurisdictions. Coordination exists, but is often sluggish, competitive, or bogged down in different laws and procedures. In many cases, one agency might be investigating a target, while another unknowingly disrupts the same operation. The result? It's a nation fighting a multi-front war without a unified battle plan, a decentralized approach against a highly organized enemy. Meanwhile, the cartels are everything the U.S. response is not. Lean, fast, and adaptable. They don't hold press conferences or wait for warrants. They use encrypted apps to issue orders, drones to scout border patrols, and sophisticated financial systems to launder billions. They're also damn near untouchable. A cartel lieutenant operating from Guadalajara can coordinate shipments from Houston, Atlanta, and Chicago in real time, while federal agents still rely on months of intelligence gathering. Every gap in America's fragmented system is a crack the cartels exploit. And Until the U.S. transforms its fight from a fractured reaction into a cohesive, coordinated strategy that bridges agencies, borders, and policies, the outcome is already written. The cartels will continue to outmaneuver the system, trafficking death across state lines while Americans spend billions chasing the shadows. The cartel economy, how guns, drugs, and people move billions. The Mexican cartels are no longer just drug traffickers. They're shadow empires operating with scale, sophistication, and profit margins of multinational corporations. Each year, these criminal syndicates rake in tens of billions of dollars, rivaling the GDPs of small nations. At the core of this economy lie three key pillars that fuel their power: narcotics, human trafficking, and weapons flow. Together, these pillars form a deadly triangle that sustains violence, corrupts governments, and destabilizes entire regions while leaving an undeniable footprint on American soil. Narcotics are the engine of the empire. They remain a cornerstone of the cartel revenue. Fentanyl, meth, and cocaine are the cash cows, generating billions in profit each year. The synthetic drug trade, especially fentanyl, has revolutionized the business model. Unlike cocaine or heroin, fentanyl is cheap to manufacture, potent in tiny doses, and easy to smuggle. A single kilo produced for a few $1,000s, a single kilo produced for around $5,000 in Mexico can generate millions in the U.S. streets. Meth labs, many hidden deep in Mexico's rural heartlands, crack out product at industrial scale, and then funnel through cartel-controlled routes into California, Arizona, and Texas. Cocaine, still flowing from South America, remains a global commodity, but it's fentanyl that's become the cartel's most profitable and daily export. Another daily export is definitely going to be human trafficking. While drugs pay the bills, human trafficking has slowly become a second pillar of the cartel's economics. With stricter U.S. border enforcement and waves of migration from Central America, the demand for passage into the U.S. has skyrocketed. Cartels, they charge migrants thousands of dollars for a single crossing, often treating them as disposable cargo. Some are forced into indentured servitude or extorted for money once into the U.S. Even more sinister, certain groups, they traffic women and children for the sex trade, turning border chaos into organized exploitation. This is not mere smuggling. It's a calculated, industrialized human trade that now rivals drug profits in scale and brutality. Another brutal attachment to cartels is the weapons flow. While drugs and people flow north, guns and ammunition flow south. The U.S. is the primary source of cartel firepower, thanks to the lax gun laws and booming firearms market. Cartels use straw buyers to legally purchase semi-automatic rifles, handguns, and high-capacity magazines, then smuggle them across the border to foot soldiers, enforcers, and private militias. These weapons fuel Mexico's internal bloodshed, used in executions, ambushes, and open warfare against rival cartels and security forces. It's a reverse pipeline. The same nation been flooded with drugs is also supplying the guns used to protect those drug routes. Together, these three pillars, narcotics, human trafficking, and weapons flow, create a closed-loop economy of violence and profit. Drugs, they poison the U.S. while enriching the cartels. Migrants are commodified and trafficked under the guise of hope. And American guns, they return south to fortify the very groups destabilizing the region. Every pillar supports the next. Each needs to feed the other. The cartel economy, it doesn't just operate in the shadows anymore. It's woven into the fabric of two nations, sustained by corruption, demand, and a constant flow of money, body, and bullets. Inside the cartel mindset, loyalty, fear, and power. For decades, the United States government waged an aggressive war against the Mexican drug cartels, deploying billions of dollars, high-tech surveillance tools, and elite law enforcement units that dismantle these criminal empires. Task forces have been formed, drug lords arrested, and massive drug seizures announced with great fanfare. But behind the headlines at press conference, one uncomfortable truth remains. The cartels are not shrinking, they're thriving. In fact, despite years of relentless pressure, these criminal organizations have become richer, more violent, and more deeply embedded across the United States than ever before. Meanwhile, cartel operations in Mexico are stronger than ever. Groups like the Sinaloa Cartel and the CJNG not only control drug production and smuggling routes, but also govern entire regions, collect taxes, run extortion rackets, and execute rivals with military precision. Their war tariffs are so loud that they can outspend government, private officials, and arm themselves with weapons purchased illegally in the U.S. The very system that's trying to stop them often ends up feeding their power.